What's up? Back again, the Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you for joining me today. My guest is Jay Horwitz. He was the PR director for the New York Mets for 40 years, and it's really great to have him on today. It's awesome to run down somebody that's really seen it all. So my thanks to Jay Horwitz for being the guest today. He's now the Alumni Relations Director for the New York Mets as well. Still cranking, 75 years old. So it's awesome to run him down and get all the stories from his career and all the stuff he's seen over the years, including the 86 World Series, everybody in between. So great to run him down today. If you'd like to follow him, he's at J_Horwitz PR. That's on Twitter. As always, if you'd like to follow the show, it's at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. You can find me there. If you'd like to email the show, it's tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch the episodes, we have a YouTube channel. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. As far as the audio goes, it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon. We're on Pandora now. If you listen to Pandora, we're on there as well, pretty much everywhere. So if you want to track us down, just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast and find us. If you could, subscribe, rate, and review, especially on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. If you're on Apple, scroll all the way down as far as you can till you see those stars. If you could, if you think the show is good, give me a 5-star. That'd be great, just to help promote the show so we can get some more exposure. With that, enjoy the episode with Jay Horwitz today, and I'll see you on the other side.
Going crazy.
My next guest is a legend in the New York Mets organization. He's been the director of public relations for nearly 40 years there. He recently transitioned to become the vice president of alumni public relations for the Mets, and he's the pride of NYU and a North New Jersey native. He is Jay Horwitz. How's it going, Jay?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you on. I was glad we got connected. I had on a previous episode, David Ostrowski, so he helped us get connected. So
good. No
shout
problem
out to David, man.
Good. No problem.
It's great to have you on. Just to briefly go over, we're going to go through your life and your career, but you've been there for nearly 40 years. I mean, or almost even more than 40 years.
Yeah, I started April 1st, 1980. I'm really bad at addition. So this is 2021. It's 42 years, starting my 42nd year. I can't add. But I started April 1st, 1980. I've always been at that kind of stuff.
Can you believe you've been there that long?
No, not really. It's been fun. I never really thought this was a job, in my new job with dealing with the alumni, but I always enjoyed. I never was a clock watcher, never looked at what time it was, never worried about weekends at the beach. I just loved my job, and I was, really honored to be working in the place as long as I have.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, just what, as far as 2020 went for you, was it difficult for you the last year, even with, dealing with the team and having, like different bubble situations almost? What was it like for you?
We really did a good thing. In 2019, or my first year was 2019 with the alumni. We put alumni in each weekend to do media, meet with the fans, sign autographs. So because of the pandemic, we couldn't do it this year. So we did a new thing. We had an alumni Zoom call to nursing homes and assisted living places. These people haven't been outside of the outside. I haven't seen anybody since March. So we had Johnny Franco, Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden, Turk Wendell, Ron Sabota. Every week for we did a 45-minute call with these people, which really a nice thing. But I've been home since March 4th. Haven't been to city since then. So it's different. You know what though? I'm healthy. I'm trying to be safe and what the world is about. And I just got to try and be safe and just take care of yourself.
For sure, man. Definitely. I totally understand that. I want to just talk about your upbringing a little bit. So you're obviously a North New Jersey guy. I was going to ask you, because out here in California, we have SoCal and NorCal, and we have, that's definitely divided. Is that a thing, Northern New Jersey and Southern New Jersey?
Not really. I mean, I was actually born in the Bronx, New York, and right by Yankee Stadium. And I came here since I was about 6 years old. I'm right by the George Washington Bridge and Giant Stadium. So it is Northern New Jersey, but I never,
Gotcha. Okay. So I didn't know you were originally from New York. I was doing when I did my research on you, but I did see that Yeah, I saw that you had some eye issues as a kid. I
Yes.
saw, and you talked about it in your book. I know it said you waited a while to talk about it. So what happened there?
When my mother carried me, she got German measles, and I was born blind in my right eye with glaucoma. So I had one blue eye and one green eye. So all through grade school, I was ridiculed. They made fun of me. The kids laughed at me, and
Yeah.
it was tough. And then when I was about in sixth grade, I went to Dr. Jones's little pass. He said you could have to have your right eye taken out because the glaucoma could spread to your left eye. And I said, so I had no choice, but to do that. And so I had an artificial eye put in my eye, and in my right eye, and and there again, I didn't look normal. I didn't look at people directly, and I was ridiculed a lot as a kid. I said, probably like last year, somebody we did a story on my 40 years with the Mets, and they asked me, why do you watch the games with binoculars? And I do. I watch because I don't see distance that well. I say, why not? Let me just tell him. Maybe if some young kid reads it, because he's being born, with a disabled, doesn't make you can't have a career. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to write a book, it's one of the messages I wanted to get out in the book. That you don't have to be perfect. I was hoping somebody reads a book, kid with had one leg, something, and maybe somebody can get some inspiration that you don't have to be perfect to have a career. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book.
I think that's a great message, man. And your book is, all the people you've met over the years is awesome. So that's one also great thing about your book is you're able to open up like that finally, which is
Yeah, I
great.
figured why not? My days of modeling on Vogue and the cover are long over with. So,
Right. I hear you. As far as growing up in sports, I saw that you really didn't play that much, but you became a student manager in high school for those teams. Was that kind of a foreshadowing for you for how you would involve yourself in the game?
well, all my friends were athletes. They played on the football team. They ran track, and I wasn't. My extent of my career, I played for a little league team, and the only way I used to hit the ball was to bunt. And
Okay.
one day my father said, "Unless you swing away, I'm not going to play anymore." So one day I swung away, hit a line drive to center field. I tripped coming out of the batter's box. The guy threw me out at first base, and that was my only way of staying in tune, being involved. I couldn't be on the football team. I couldn't be on the basketball team. So I managed the team. Remember my senior year when I got my Letterman sweater, I had more stripes on my sleeve than the starting quarterback. I remember one of the cheerleaders said, "Who the hell is this guy with all the stripes?" So yeah, that was my way of funneling my love for sports in a different direction.
That's
You
cool.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I saw you ended up going to NYU, which is obviously a great school, and you
Right.
majored in journalism. So and you eventually went back to NYU as their sports information director. But as far as the journalism side, what made you lean toward that as far as covering the sport now, as far as being in it?
I mean, I just liked NYU was known for its journalism school, and I wanted to be a writer. At some point, and I just was, I became and when I was at school at NYU, they were the number one basketball team in the country. They had a guy too young to remember, and guys like Barry Kramer and Happy Hairston. Barry went on to play with the Knicks, and Happy went to play with the Lakers.
Oh
So I
yeah.
became a student manager, and it was just my way of really staying in touch with it. And I worked on the school newspaper, and then I went back to originally when I got out of school, I minored in political science. I got my master's in political science. I was a big John Kennedy guy growing up. I wanted to go into politics. Um, I actually campaigned for Robert Kennedy a little bit, not campaign, make some envelopes, mail some envelopes out. But I just got diverted, and and I wanted to. I actually got my doctorate in political science too, but I just never really followed through with it. And I campaigned for all the wrong president candidates.
Uh, and I saw you grew up a Jets fan. Is that right?
No, no, God
Oh,
forbid, Giants fan,
oh,
Giants
Giants.
fan.
But you covered the Jets though,
I
didn't you?
cut. Yeah, it was the thing is one game I covered the first time the Jets and the Giants played an exhibition game in New Haven. The Jets won 37-0 with Namath as the quarterback. I traveled with the Jets for a year.
Oh wow.
They were great to me, like Weeb Eubank and Johnny Sample, Paul Crane, Al Atkinson. And it was the hardest story I ever had to write. That the Jets beat the Giants, 37-0.
Wow. So obviously you didn't want to stay too long with the Jets because that's just
No, I
too
was
much
there
for you
for
to
I
handle.
was there for a fall, and then the job opened up is at Farleigh Dickinson to be the sports information director. Somebody from the Bergen Record recommended me, and really from 72 to 80, I was at Farleigh Dickinson before I came to the Mets.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about those 8 years. So you were, I mean, you became famous from what I saw online for like your headline stories about like the one-armed fencer or stuff like that, like your quirky funniness about the way
I looked for we weren't a powerhouse, but we had a lot of unusual athletes, human interest stories. We had a one-armed fencer, an Arab Israeli goalie on the same team, priest who played hockey, a baseball player got hit by a pitch 128 times. Probably the best athlete I worked with was Franklin Jacobs, who set a high jump record. He jumped 2 feet over his head. He won the Milrose games in 1980. He was 5'6", and he set the record at 7'6". So
Wow.
and that got my affiliation with those kind of crazy athletes, got the attention of the Mets.
Okay. Yeah, which is awesome. And I wanted to ask you about that. So it's 1980. You get a call from the vice president of the Mets. What do you remember about that phone call?
I hung up on him the first time. This is the winter of 1980. I had accepted a job at Farleigh at NYU, excuse me, at NBC to be the staff guy for Joe Caraggio and Tony Kubek. And this guy called us. I'm Jim Nagurney, VP of the Mets. We wanted to interview for the job. So I said, it was my friend Howard. I hung up on him. Next day, he called me up. It was legitimate. I said, why not? Let me see. So I flew down to St. Petersburg, Florida. I went to the wrong hotel. I was late for the interview. And when I got there, Frank Cash and a GM in the Mets sitting near his little white tennis shorts. And I got so nervous, I knocked over his huge container of oranges on his lap.
Oh.
He asked me one question. He said, have you read Brosnan? Do you like to read? I said, who wrote it? Shakespeare? I said, no, it was Jim Brosnan, the old Chicago White Sox pitcher. He wrote a Jim Bouton kind of book. And Frank said, well, that's all I need to know. The interview lasted about 5 minutes. And on my way back to the airport, I called my late mother and Mom, there's no way I got this job. And, 40 plus years later, I'm still here.
That is unbelievable. You would think, I saw that you had got an interview and you wrote about that. You're like, there's no way I spilled orange juice on him. There's no way I'm getting this job.
No way I got the job. No way. I'm still here.
You've been there ever since. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you about your first few years. So the early 80s, the Mets weren't that great, but you did get to work with Joe Torre, who, notoriously is known for, being with the Yankees and winning World Series there, but he was a Met first. So what do you remember about working with Joe Torre, you dedicated a chapter in your book to him?
Joe Torre was my first manager. He told me what it was like to be in the major leagues. I was a 34-year-old kid coming out of college, didn't know anything about anything. He introduced me to all his friends. He introduced me to Reggie Jackson, Pete Rose, George Brett. Every time we met a player from I'm posting manager, he brought me over. He had a restaurant he used to eat in downtown Manhattan. A couple of times a month, he took me there to eat. On our first road trip to Montreal, he took me to a famous tie store on St. Catherine Street. He bought me 7 of the ugliest ties. He was the manager with these big fat ties, and I wore them. I had to wear them for 14 straight days. And even now, when I need a favor or a charity thing, he's always there for me, despite the fact that he's become a conglomerate with tea commercials and all the other stuff. He's a dear friend, and I'll do anything for him. And anytime I need him, he does anything for me.
That's awesome, man. That's a great story. Glad you got to make that connection with him.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about, in 1983, this skinny lefty from LA comes out, and it's Darryl Strawberry comes up with the Mets.
Right.
I saw you got interviewed about, maybe you said yes to too many things with Darryl when he was first there, but you would think he'd be a public relations dream. What was it like with Darryl and the media there in New York?
Well, I got to understand one thing. When Darryl came up in May of 1983, we were a terrible team. And he had, number 1 draft overall in 1980, cover of Sports Illustrated, the Black Ted Williams. This Darryl came before there was Keith, before there was Carter, before there was Gooden. He was really the only guy there for a lot of the year. A lot of pressure on him, and we were a bad team. And the PR guy always tries to get publicity. So I said, whether you're from Utah, Tennessee, Montana, was doing the interview. It was way too much pressure on him. But Darryl rebounded. He had 26 home runs that year. Wound up winning the Rookie of the Year, and he had some hiccups on the career later on. But he's rebounded. He's a traveling minister now. Does a lot of good work with kids, and he's really turned his life around.
I actually, when I was researching for this, I looked him up. He had a really good career. He had some crazy numbers, like 8-time All-Star. Like, he was a lot better than I think people remember.
He won 3 World Series with the Yankees, 1 with us, and he's doing great work now with kids. Darryl was a 2-time cancer survivor. He goes around preaching cancer prevention. He goes around the country speaking to kids about the evils of opioids. So he does a lot of great work, and I'm really proud of him.
That's good, man. That's good to hear. And I mean, you mentioned him earlier, but another phenom that came along was Dwight Gooden, and he was kind of the second big superstar you guys had in those early '80s years. What do you remember about Dwight, the pitcher, and maybe off the field, the guy, and all that stuff?
Well, again, Dwight in 1983 struck out 300 batters at Lynchburg in the Carolina League. So the pressure, again, I kind of said yes to too many things. But as the year went on, Steve Brenner, who was a good friend of mine with the PR guy with the Dodgers, he told me what they did with Valenzuela. He would only speak the day after he pitches and maybe one other time. So I became a shield for Dwight to cut off the interviews. And, that's how we had the Special K corner. Every time he struck out guys, they put it on the left field signboard. So, we had, being a phenom in New York is a tough deal. But, and right, again, is well documented. Darryl had some off the field problems, but right now he works for a hospital in Hackensack, speaking to cancer kids, speaks to high schools, and both of those guys' messages are, "Don't do what I did," and they, yeah, maybe people say, well, they should have been in the Hall of Fame. You know what to do now with kids and children and anti-drug and anti-drinking stuff? Maybe in a way it's more important in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree with that. And then I wanted to ask you, eventually 1986 comes and you guys have a magical run. You end up winning the World Series. What was that like for you being a part of that whole run for them?
It's a crazy run because with a team of diverse personalities, you had Darryl and Doc, Lenny and Wally Backman, Darlene, Sid, Bobby Ojeda, Gary. And, one who really held it together was Davey Johnson, the manager. Davey didn't really care what the press wrote. He was bold and audacious. In the spring of '86, I remember in St. Petersburg, he said, guys, not only are we going to win, we're going to dominate. And that's the tone he set for the whole year. We were 2-3 after our first 5 games. And at our welcome home dinner, he told the crowd, we're not going to lose many more games the rest of the year. So we lost 51 more games the rest of the year. And he set the tone for the team. He kept everybody together. He was a player's manager. He was the one, the glue that held everything together.
Was your experience with Davey different than Joe Torre?
Well, I mean, Davey was younger. He just come from the minor league. Joe was a player manager before, and it was really, I mean, just Davey was a lot more, how to say, a nice way, with maybe more outspoken than Joe was.
Yeah.
And Joe was maybe a little bit more controlled, but they both were great people.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I did want to ask you, so the night after that, we get into the 90s and it's kind of like a decade of characters with a lot of talent. So you had a guy that's well documented as one of your favorite people is John Franco.
Right.
And then you had Bobby Valentine became the manager. But I wanted to ask you about John Franco specifically. He was a notorious prankster from what I saw, when I was researching you, and he used to do some crazy stuff to you.
Yeah, Johnny is one of my closest friends. And Johnny taught me a lot of valuable lessons about the locker room. He said, you can't take yourself seriously. If the players don't screw with you, they don't like you. And they screw with me a lot, and no more than John. Tell you a couple of cleaner things I could tell you. We're in a hotel in Los Angeles. Johnny unscrewed the horse head from the lobby, went into my room in the hotel, shut off the lights, put ketchup on the pillows, put the horse head under the bedspread, and when I looked at it, looked like I had a dead horse in my room. And he would do things like put a rat in my work bag, put put white out on my glasses, put rats in my work bag, put ice cream sandwiches in my suits. I mean, but it was all out of love, I mean, and Johnny's got a heart of gold, and he was on the 2001 team when we did a lot to help the city heal after 9/11. Johnny's got a big heart, and he did a lot of good work for Governor Cuomo in the pandemic that's going on now.
Yeah, I want to get to that early 2000 team in 1 second, but I did want to touch on Bobby Valentine. So he had some interesting things happen. He had the famous 14-inning game where he got ejected, and then he came back with the disguise on, and it was he was a quirky guy too. You did dedicate another chapter to Bobby Valentine. What do you remember about your time with him?
Bobby is another guy. He's he wanted to make the team loose. That's why he came back. It was actually Robin Ventura's idea to come back with the costume. He came back on. He got fined. He was worth it. What I remember most about Bobby is the work he did in 9/11. I don't know if you want to jump ahead. One of his best friends was a jumper from the building, one of the towers, and he put everything, heart and soul, into at that time, Shea Stadium was a recovery area after the attacks. Our players packed up, sent it down to 9/11. Bobby went to every charity event, every dinner. He was just 100% into it. And then, that's 1986 was great. But if he asked me what's my fondest memory, is probably the 2001 team for what we did for the city after the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah, I saw that when you were interviewed in that, and I saw that Mike Piazza had a game-winning legendary home run right after that. But you actually did say the work in the community is something you'll remember forever.
Yeah, and right after the home run was a magical home run, made people smile. But after the game, Mike and all the other Met players came out to the dugout and signed autographs for the firemen's kids and the policemen's kids, which was more, even more special. We made so many visits down to the ground zero to see the police and firemen. It was just, that's the way. And we're coming up, next year on 20 years on 9/11, and the Yankees are going to play us at Citi Field. So it's going to be a very emotional night for a lot of people who were there that night.
Yeah, and speaking of the Yankees, I couldn't forget to talk about the Subway Series in 2000.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you about that. There was a lot of buzz that you got the blue collar Mets fans, and then you got the corporate rich Yankee fans in the city and all that stuff. What do you remember about the Subway Series?
It was crazy. Friends came out of the woodwork wanting tickets, and I remember I got a call from somebody I went to grammar school with. The guy said to me, "Hey, this is Bob, whatever I'm to say his name. I always knew you were going to get into sports. Great Union World Series. Could I get 2 tickets? I'll even pay for them." And I said, "No, I really can't do that." But just a buzz. And I always felt the 2000 team is probably a most unappreciated team. We won 90 plus games, had a great postseason, and we lost the series to the Yankees in five games by a total of 5 runs, I think. And the Yankees were a great team.
Yeah.
We lost it in the first game. We were heading. We lost the lead in the 9th inning. We lost the 12 innings. And it was just never really, because we didn't win the whole thing. We never really got the credit. And that was a team really, except for Mike and, Alfonso, we really didn't have a lot of, quote, superstars on the team. It was guys like Jay Payton, Timo Perez, Todd Zeal, and, like guys like Rick Reed, Bobby Jones,
Yeah.
and it really never got the credit we deserved.
I want to ask you about the Roger Clemens Mike Piazza feud. If you remember,
Yeah.
I think Clemens hit him in the head earlier in the year and he gave him a concussion. And then in the World
Right.
Series, he had the famous broken bat where he
Right,
threw it at
right.
Piazza. What was that like for you to handle all the media around that?
Well, the problem is Roger got upset because Mike kept hitting home runs off him.
Yeah.
That was the problem. No, I mean, Mike is one guy you really couldn't tell what to say. We were down in the locker room, and it was one of the worst things they've ever seen on the field. I don't know how a bat looks like a ball. I don't have great eyesight, but
Yeah.
Mike just said it was a despicable thing. And Mike has gotten criticized through the years by some people by not fighting with Roger, going to the mound. But if he went to the mound to fight him, he probably would have gotten ejected. In the short World Series, what's the point of doing that? So,
Right.
I mean, he used his self-control and didn't do it. But I don't know how Clemens was able to pitch after that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Mike, I don't know what his average against him, but I remember he hit a couple home runs to center field, and he hit him pretty well.
Yeah, for sure he did. I'm sure that's
Mike
what Roger
was in the locker room. He spoke his mind, and one thing I've learned as a PR guy, you can't program everything. The guys, Mike knew what happened. I remember I went to his locker. I said, "Mike, you ready to go?" "I'm ready to go," and let him say what he said.
Gotcha. Okay. Is that when when do you think for you the media has been the most, was that like the height of it for you as far as attention for the Mets?
Well, probably, in 80,
80s,
in
yeah.
85, 86, when we had Darryl, Doc, Carter, Davey, Darlene, when that came, when those guys came, and then, really for that period from 84 to 90, we really dominated New York. I mean, we won 90 plus games practically every year, and they had the wild card back then. We would in the playoffs every year,
Yeah.
But it really picked up, from 80 to 83, it wasn't great. 84 to 90, we were on the back pages every day, and really till we got to the late 90s until it really changed again. We got Mike in 98, and then it was like a traveling superstar when he came over, and that that brought us. Then we became a really contending team and a national team. Instead of getting one reporter from a paper, we got 2. What did Piazza do? What did the team do? So that was and Mike's career didn't start off that great. He really got booed in the beginning, and there was a lot of discussion whether he's going to sign back with the Mets, but he did, and he signed a nice contract in the Mets Hall of Fame. Is in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, where he rightfully belongs.
Oh yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask you, so about the 2000s, that became, like the mid 2000s became about the young superstars. You had guys like Jose Reyes and you had David Wright, the other Mr.
Right.
Met other than you.
Right.
And he's been there forever. You guys, from what I saw, had a great relationship.
Right.
What can you say about David Wright, who basically was the captain the last 20 years?
Yeah, David Wright is great to play. 7-time All-Star, great a player he was. He was 100 times better person. He started a foundation at the age 22 or 23. Never went away for an autograph. I remember one night in Philadelphia, we lost a tough game in extra innings, and I was waiting for him to go back to the hotel. He stopped. There were like kids waiting for him. He stopped and signed. Did tremendous charity work. There's this hospital in his hometown in Norfolk. He's made over $1 million for them doing stuff, and he's just he just does things the right way. His father was a policeman, mother was a teacher, and I still keep in contact with him. But he's still just a great guy, and it's just a shame. I think he was well on his way to a Hall of Fame career until the injury started to pile up.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. He was a great third baseman for a long time. So
yeah.
You had other guys that are, kind of flash in the pan, but he had a great career. It was like Johan Santana, just out of nowhere. I mean, what do you remember about covering him? That was about 10 years ago.
The no-hitter.
Yeah.
Night, after the game, I remember walking to the interview with Terry Collins. He was almost ready to kill himself because he threw 134 pitches. He wanted, in his head, he wanted to take him out. In his heart, he couldn't take him out. And it was just the excitement. With all the great pitches we've had, Seaver, Gooden, Koosman, Gentry. This is the first no-hitter. Just the excitement in that night, and then, then unfortunately he hurt his arm and really wasn't really healthy the whole time he's with us.
Yeah, no, for sure. You've had a lot of big names come through the Mets, and just like there's a lot of random names too, like Benny Agbayani or Mo Vaughn, John Olerud.
Yeah, Benny Agbayani, one of the most popular players. One thing with Benny, we're playing a game against the Giants. He catches the ball in left field. He seeks his third out, throws it to a kid in the stand, realizes it's not the third out, gets the ball back. We won the game, and after the game, he made sure the kid got another ball. John Olerud, probably one of the top fielding first baseman with Keith, and just a classy guy, and he had a 357 one year, when Heisman averages, and just a great professional. He's probably the greatest infield ever, with Olerud first, Alfonso at second, Ray Ordonez at short, and Robin Ventura at third. Sports Illustrated had a cover story that this is probably the best fielding infield, of all time.
Oh yeah, for sure. You had a ton of talent come through the Mets organization. In the foreword of your book, you chose Jacob Degrom to write the foreword for you, and he's obviously a young superstar. What kind of brought you to have him?
This is what the thing is. I'm a lot older than Jacob. I turned 75. Jacob is in the early 30s.
Right.
And I had a quirky relationship with him. When I would ask him to do something, like his first Cy Young, I had to sit down in my locker. I said, Jacob, if we're going to help you get this, we're going to have to convince people that wins don't mean anything,
Right.
That he had 9 or 10 wins. So he did a space in 2 weeks, probably 9, 10, 11 interviews. And he would say, Jacob, I got another one for you. And we had this basketball court in the middle of the locker room. He said, I'll do this interview if you make 2 or 3 shots. I never made 2 or 3 shots. But the whole thing why I did it, I wanted to show these guys, even though I was a lot older than a lot of them, I wasn't a suit. I was one of them. They could trust me. And another time, he said, Jay, I'll do an interview for you, but you have to go on the field. And me and Steven Matz fungos. So I never hit a ball, but I did it. And that was my way of establishing a relationship with him. And I'll tell you this, Jacob Degrom is probably one of the most top competitors I've ever seen. When he went through those 2 Cy Young years, hardly much run support, never complained. He's not an I person. He's a we person. Never once did he throw his teammates under the bus about losing a 1-0 game or coming out of the game 0-0 in the 7th inning. He's just a true professional. And right now, you have Seaver, Gooden, in our history, and he is right there. You know, I mean, and if he wins another Cy Young, no, who knows? But I mean, he's just a real, and he doesn't care anything except pitching. All he wants to do is pitch.
That's awesome to hear, man. Yeah, you really, for us on the outside, even though I used to play, like
Yeah,
I don't, we get to hear that side. It's pretty cool to hear that
yeah,
from someone.
he's a real competitor. He's a good guy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's why the publisher wanted, because my job, they interrupt you.
Oh yeah.
I deal most with the alumni now. So they asked me who did they have the best relationship among the younger guys on the team, and it was Degrom. And I went to him, and he sat down and was nice enough to write something for me.
That's great. That's really cool that he did that. As far as 2021 goes, you have a new owner in Steve Cohen who seems to have a new sense of energy. You guys just pulled off a huge trade yesterday for Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, so he's already on the way to help this organization making moves. How does it feel to you, even though you're in the organization, from what you can say as far as what the team direction is moving forward?
I think we're in a really great place now. Mr. Cohen is a big fan. I remember one thing that stuck in my mind when Tom Seaver passed away in August. Steve tweeted something on his thing, in deference to Tom. He told the writers here he's gone to seen the 69 team play. He's familiar with the names of our history. He wants to reinstitute Banner Day, Old Timers Day games. So I think he's really got a good sense of our history. I think we're, and we pulled off the Lindor trade the other day, which I think, we were, 27-year-old superstar, four-time, all-star, MVP candidate, with the team we have. I think we're going to be well versed to really climb up in the standings this year.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you there. As far as your new gig as the VP of Alumni Relations, what's it been like for you to step back from the PR role and now you're on a different side of the business and reconnecting? And I follow you. I just followed you on Twitter the other day. It's really cool. You bring all these old stories, and I remember all the names that you bring up and of guys that have played with you. What's it been
appreciate
like?
that. Actually, I didn't like it in the beginning. Jeff Wilpon came to me, one of our former owners in the middle of 2018, asked me if I wanted to transition to another role. And I said, Jeff, really, I like to travel. I like to camaraderie in the locker room. I said, anyway, I don't want to do it. He said, well, think about it for a day. I thought about it for 2 days, and I said I would do it. And what I like about it, we never really did a whole lot with the alumni. And what we did, we were trying to connect from the past. I'll give you an example. Hobie Landreth was the first player taken by the Mets in the 62 draft. I called him about 6-7 months ago, and he said I was the first somebody from the Mets organization to speak to him in 50 years. So we try to, and we bring, we started a pretty cool program this year with the pandemic. Every week we do alumni Zoom calls to nursing homes and assisted living places. So guys like, Strawberry, Gooden, Art Shamsky, Ed Crapo, we talk to these senior citizens who've really been cooped up since March, and they can't see their families. They don't go out. So it's been good to reconnect with the past, and like we got Ed Cranepool a year ago, got a new kidney. We got some publicity for him. Cleon Jones from the 69 team does a lot of great work with charities in Mobile. So there's a good connection with the older guys. Let them know we care. Let them know we give a damn. I think it's an important part.
Yeah.
And it really fits in well with the new owner now and everything.
Right, which is good that he embraces that too, because it doesn't sound like they might not have in the past.
Right, no.
As far as the fan, I just wanted to ask you, obviously I'm in California. I didn't get to, live around the Mets and Yankees fans. What can you say about the difference between the Mets fans and Yankees fans?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Yankees have won 28 World Championships.
Yeah.
And, I've always felt it as a rivalry. I'm in my realm, the battle of the back pages, battle of the getting on the radio shows. We had a week where I got more back pages in New York Post than the Yankees, and I felt it's an accomplishment. I mean, they have a right. I think what we're now, we're hoping that we can win as consistently the Yankees have in the past. You have to give them credit. I mean, to win that many World Championships, I don't remember the last time they finished below 500. So, I think our fans, maybe the lunchbox kind of people, the everyday kind of people. Maybe it's not. You know what I mean? I think they stick with us. They've been sticking with us for a long time, and hopefully we can get them a winner next year.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that'd be awesome if you guys could do that.
Yeah.
As far as just the media in general, obviously you've been doing this, like you said, for 42 years. What's it been like as it's transitioned more digital, and how have you handled the transition from like print media to now digital media?
Well, the biggest thing in my later years as a PR guy was Twitter and Instagram, and basically we had a media session every spring to tell the guys to be aware they are, who you go up on an elevator with, who you put your arms around, who do you go to a bar with. Like what happened, like Mike Phelps, the swimmer, he got into trouble. One of his friends posted something at a party. Just you have to be aware. The days of writing press releases are long over with. The agents announced it, the players announced it. I mean, people have to be more aware of what's going on in the world, and you can't take anything for granted. You just got to look where you are, and the smallest thing could turn into a big thing. How many people get fired for something that they tweet or something that they do. You have to be more aware than when I first started. When I first started in the bygone era, you write a release, you'd be in the paper the next day. Now it's instantly in the paper.
Yeah.
So you just have to be aware of what the hell's going on.
Right. Now, if the team, is, they're going to travel around and stuff like that. Do you travel with the team still?
No, I really have nothing to do with the day-to-day thing. I'm hoping that if things get better, we can reinstitute our alumni program. And if we have fans, we can bring back alumni to the home games to sign autographs and, do some social media stuff. We have the Hall of Fame Club, where 2 years ago was a big hit. We brought in guys for an hour. They would sit at the desk and sign picture postcards of themselves. And you could just, it didn't have to be a gigantic superstar, just the average guy, is what so that's what we're hoping to do this year.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. It would be awesome to be able to do that. Yeah. Last question, just as far as any favorite other pranks that maybe Franco did or that David Wright did to you over the years?
Well, what they do is, David Wright and Johnny did. I think David Wright picked up Johnny's tradition again because I have bad eyesight. I watched the games with binoculars, so Johnny started a tradition. I would leave my binoculars on a stool in the locker room. He would get tar and put them on the inner part of the binoculars. So when I got up to the binoculars and took my binoculars off, I looked like Petey from the Little Rascals, the dog with rings around my mouth. And David Wright picked up the tradition, and as stupid as I am, David used to do it to me once 3 or 4 times a year. So, but that, again, you got to be able to laugh at yourself. And that's what they've been able to do through the years.
That's great, man. That's awesome. That's really cool. I want to tell everybody the name of your book in case they want to go get it and read it. It's called Mr. Met, How a Sports Mad Kid from Jersey Became Like Family to Generations of Big Leaguers. You can follow him on Twitter at J_Horwitz PR. Jay, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Be safe. That's the main thing. Be safe.
Yes, you too. Thank you very much. Good luck this season.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Got it. My thanks to Jay Horwitz. That's a great episode. Hope you guys got something out of that. Just the pure years and experience he's had dealing with the New York media and all the stuff he's seen from the 86 World Series to the 2000 Subway Series between the Mets and the Yankees. He's seen it all. So great to track him down. Once again, at J_Horwitz PR is where you can find him. And the book is called Mr. Met, How a Sports Mad Kid from Jersey Became Like Family to Generations of Big Leaguers. So go ahead and check that out on any bookstore where you can find your books. Once again, the show is at Too Tall Sports Podcast on Instagram. If you want to check me out on Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. If you'd like to watch the show on YouTube, just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. You'll find all of our episodes there. We like to drop one a week, so just be prepared for that and follow along with the show. If you'd like to email the show, it's tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week for another great episode.